Hitler's Berlin, the heart of Nazi Germany. Beneath its concrete and steel lies a clandestine world designed under the watchful eye of the Führer himself. A vast complex of bunkers, shelters, and tunnels built to protect his people and defend his crown jewel as he sought world domination. But when the Nazis' fate is sealed in 1945, so is their subterranean realm.
Workmen discover underground passages leading to air raid shelters, once used by members of Hitler's government.
Now, more than 60 years later, a team of archaeologists is setting out to reveal Berlin's dark past and unlock Hitler's secret city. The mission begins in a park in the suburbs of northern Berlin. Here, a bizarre concrete fort juts out of a hillside surrounded by trees. A founding member of this group of explorers, Dietmar Arnold, remembers venturing in as a teenager.
In this time, this was what you can say like a place for playing, only for child. You know, this was like an adventure when we come here in. This was absolute fantastic, but I never believed in this time that one day we will explore this and we will open this for the public.
Three decades later, the Berliner Underworld Association, a team of archaeologists, historians, and archivists, have spent 10,000 hours researching, clearing, and recording the bunkers. And they keep finding new secrets as they dig ever deeper into the foundations. August 1940. British bombers retaliate for the German bombing of London, hitting Berlin at night in a surprise attack. Hitler is furious. He orders the immediate construction of 3 colossal flak towers in a triangle around the city center. Bristling with anti-aircraft weapons, Hitler believes these towers will put up such a ferocious barrage that no enemy plane will dare fly over the German capital again. Obsessed with detail, Adolf Hitler pays careful attention to the architecture of these towers.
He made sketches, he designed air raid shelters, he designed flag towers, and he wanted to take part in this kind of development.
Built on concrete foundations 8 feet thick, the flak tower has a footprint of 53,000 square feet, nearly the size of a football field. The massive exterior walls are 8 feet thick and 7 stories tall. Capping it all is a concrete roof 11 feet thick, enough to withstand a direct hit by Allied bombers. 16 gun platforms complete the tower, giving 360 degrees of fire cover.
To erect one of those flag towers, it was necessary to have 100,000 tons of ballast, 78,000 tons of gravel, 35,000 tons of cement, 9,200 tons of steel, and 15,000 cubic meters of wood. So the biggest problems for the Germans was the transportation question.
It's a race against time. The Nazis alter the national train timetable to deliver 1,600 tons of material every day of the week. They also commandeer barges from France and Holland to bring more supplies by water. 1,000 laborers work day and night, completing the flak towers in just 6 months. A separate radar tower scans the sky for incoming enemy bombers. It's designed to detect planes many miles away, then retract down a 40-foot shaft before the bombs start falling. The combination of immense firepower and high-tech radar puts a protective dome over the city. Joachim Karau is drafted to work in the tower when he is just 15.
Wir wurden 1944
In 1944, I was recruited with my entire school class to become flag helpers. We first worked on the searchlights, and later we were trained to help on the triple guns.
Bombing Berlin becomes one of the world's deadliest jobs. Casualty figures for Allied bombers are horrific. After the war, the Allies tried to destroy all 3 flak towers. At Humboldtine, the French only manage half the job. They spare the structures that stand too close to the railway line. Then, they bury the tower in a mountain of rubble, wiping it from history. Until now.
Every year we find some forgotten history of Berlin and try to open it, to discover it, to document it, and to show it to the public.
Sascha Keil is an historian and leading member of the 300-strong Berlin Underworld Association. Their headquarters is a wartime air raid shelter hidden under a subway station. And their mission, to uncover the lost history of underground Berlin. Over the past 10 years, they found a secret city beneath the streets, locating 100 bunkers and charting more than 25 miles of tunnels. In the process, they've created a detailed picture of the Nazi capital. Their detective work is invaluable in understanding Hitler's Berlin, because today's city looks nothing like it did in 1945. Allied forces destroy 90% of Berlin. Bombers pound the city day and night. Then, over 2 brutal weeks, the Russian army blasts its way street by street into the city center to finally end the conflict. After the war, the Allies flattened many of Hitler's key buildings, destroying most traces of the Nazi regime. But underground, a network of bunkers and tunnels survives, providing a gateway back to everyday life in Nazi Germany. British historian Anthony Beevor has written a definitive account of the fall of Berlin. Together with Keil and his team, they head off limits into the dangerous depths of the Humboldtine Tower.
So on the right side now, right around the corner, we have many thousands of cubic meters of rubble.
So with this great big curve on it, is it still safe?
Is it safe? Yes, I can say. Because of the strong steel nets, they are still intact.
Though Beevor's written extensively about wartime Berlin, this is a world he's never seen before.
To the next level.
This is the 3rd level?
Yeah. And you see, it's the middle of the building.
Yes. Look at that.
It's a treasure trove of the deadly daily business of war.
It's only a small collection of what we found.
Yes.
Some boxes for the gas mask from the soldiers.
Yes. Yep.
Remember the pictures.
The kill scuttle helmet, yes. This is definitely smaller than the normal one. I think these are the small helmets were specially made for the Hitler Youth and for the Flakhelfers, who are all about sort of 15, 16. Now, what about those? These are the larger shell cases, are they?
I think it's a 12.8 from this flag tower. 12.8 centimeter, it could be. But they had a lot of calibers in this building. This is the largest caliber they used here at this flag tower.
How many of these were they firing a minute out of their guns?
12 in a minute.
12 a minute. And what was their range?
14 kilometers in the sky.
The Nazis designed this building like a huge belt-loading weapon. The guns sat on the roof, and the shells were stored here in the basement. They were connected by a mechanical hoist.
Was filled with storage layers.
So they were stacking what? All the ammunition here?
Yeah, and different layers. And
on racks.
This ammunition chamber was a bunker in the bunker, you could say.
Yeah.
At the corner, you can see the rest of the ammunition lift.
These belts carried the shells to the rooftop guns.
It looks always like the skeleton of a dinosaur.
Yes.
So it went round and round and round in a sort of conveyor belt.
The end of the shaft was protected by a huge dome of steel.
Or to prevent any bomb or incendiary coming down inside.
Yes, exactly.
Dinosaur skeleton, the remnants of that.
But this huge fortress has another purpose, a shelter for the people of Berlin.
We now stand in the gas lock of one of the former entrances here in Tower C. This is the only written evidence we found so far in this building. It's written in bigger letters, open to the public, civil bunker, civil air raid shelter, second floor.
Yes.
With an arrow in this direction.
The Nazis provide space for 15,000 civilians inside the fortress. There's even a hospital. And one tower stores the city's great art treasures, including a priceless 3,000-year-old bust of Nefertiti. Gunther Schubel, then a small boy, remembers life cocooned in the concrete fortress.
Man kann sagen, wie so eine Burg, ja.
It was like a castle with lots of people running around. It was exciting. There were windows that we closed at night. I felt safe.
In den Städten zwingt der Alarm die Menschen in die Bunker und Schutzräume.
Da waren Betten, Dreierbetten.
I remember there being 3 beds on top of one another we slept on.
These triple bunks are instantly recognizable to a generation of Berliners who called the bunkers home. Just yards from the flak tower, the Berlin underworld team hunts for a wartime bunker. After the war, it was dynamited and landscaped into a city park and eventually forgotten, until an old aerial photograph offered some intriguing clues. If the team's suspicions are correct, they'll be the first people inside the bunker in over 60 years. There's another clue, a piece of exposed concrete that might be a corner of the bunker's roof. Now, they just have to dig and hope. A few hundred yards from the Brandenburg Gate lies another of the Berlin underworld's ongoing projects, and a great secret of Nazi Berlin. Buried 60 feet beneath a city park are the foundations of Hitler's ultimate dream, the 1,000-year Reich. This access shaft leads to the start of a train tunnel 240 yards long. But this isn't part of any ordinary transport network. This is the beginning of Germania, Hitler's futuristic vision for Nazi Berlin.
We now walked about 220 meters.
Right.
It's the length of the tunnel.
Hitler wants to rebuild the city and worries over every architectural detail. Germania is his vision of a supersized Berlin, bigger and bolder than any other city on the planet. Everything is colossal. A victory arch twice the height of the French Arc de Triomphe, a central avenue broader than the Paris Champs-Élysées, and a great hall large enough to swallow St. Peter's in Rome. To many historians, Germania is nothing more than a dictator's fantasy. But this tunnel shows that Hitler's dream has roots set in concrete. In Germania, the Führer demands a huge square where he can address 1 million Germans face to face, and his architects deliver.
Diesem Bauwerk sollte ermöglicht werden, ein sogenanntes.
The idea was to create a traffic-free square in front of the Great Hall. So these tunnels were built, meaning the new transport hub for Germania was completely underground.
In 1938, workers closed the main avenue from the Brandenburg Gate and begin constructing 3 underground traffic tunnels. Nazi engineers dig down 60 feet, lining and capping a 2-way train tunnel with concrete. Above that, they encase 2 car tunnels in even more concrete before restoring the street above. But 2 years later, in 1940, the British start bombing Berlin. The tunnels are abandoned and never carry any traffic.
Sie wurden genutzt als Munitionslager während des.
They were used as ammunition dumps during the war. They were also used to make armaments. They were all part of the whole bunker building program.
These ad hoc shelters become part of daily life for Berliners. By 1945, Allied bombers hit Berlin day and night with fleets of planes, sometimes 2,000 strong. Berlin is now the most dangerous place on the planet. To be caught out in the open usually means instant death, and yet many Berliners survive. The reason lies in one of the greatest engineering projects of all time: the construction of secret bunkers, tunnels, and public air raid shelters. An underground city, complete with command posts, weapons factories, hospitals, and even radio stations. Hitler's Furhrerbunker, his final headquarters, is an impregnable concrete monolith deep under central Berlin's Reich Chancellery. But it's just one bunker at the heart of a network of civilian shelters, numbering over 1,000 in Berlin alone. In total, the Nazis poured 200 million tons of concrete for bunkers across the Reich. Today, in the city center, the Berlin Underworld Association makes a rare descent into one of these civilian shelters that's lain largely undisturbed since World War II. They've teamed up with Anthony Beaver, award-winning historian and an expert on the fall of Berlin.
In Berlin, you can only really do it underground. The whole of the rest of the city has changed completely. And this, in fact, is, if you like, the last few sort of precious elements left of Berlin in 1945.
As you can see, we're entering this mother and child bunker through a normal gas lock. You can read this in German here.
Yeah.
And during an air raid, all the doors in the bunker were closed to protect the people inside from, not only from the poison gas, but from the fire outside because of the streets were burning. At every deep bunker and tunnel, you had to pump out the water all the time.
Because, well, Berlin had such a high water table.
Yes, yes. Aufsicht.
Aufsicht, yeah.
Yeah. Germany means a kind reception, like in a hotel or office.
Tell me, one of the things that they were checking, presumably, is to make sure that there weren't any, say, foreign workers coming in. I mean, this was strictly reserved just for Germans.
Yeah, in the passport you saw the signs. If one is German, mother with a child, come in. Only Aryan Germans were allowed. No foreign workers, no slave workers, no Jews. I never saw a bunker with so many signs at the walls and in such a good shape. It's amazing.
Originally an abandoned train tunnel, this bunker takes just 6 months to complete. It holds 99 rooms along 3 corridors, enough for 1,300 people. The reinforced ceiling is made of 10 feet of concrete, and the exterior walls are 5 feet thick, making them virtually impregnable to bombs from above, but not from inside.
Ah, this is interesting. This is an explosion happened here at the end of the war. An eyewitness told us a story that they were fighting even in the tunnels, and perhaps destroyed made by a bundle of grenades on anti-tank weapon.
So even the air raid shelters weren't really safe for the women and children. I mean, because the Soviet soldiers would clear out and search through, and there was obviously fighting underground as well.
Yeah.
At the end of the corridor are signs that this bunker's been entered since the war ended.
This is a newer wall, so you can see we are not the first in this bunker. It's part of the underground Berlin Wall. And we are now under the Berlin Wall. So the bunker continued in this direction.
The communists sealed this bunker during the Cold War, but the explorers know there are still dozens of bunkers left to uncover. Back in the park, the other team's still digging to get inside their latest bunker discovery.
In die Ecke, ganz nach hinten in die Ecke.
They've created an opening just big enough for their slimmest archaeologist to squeeze through. They tie a lifeline around his foot so they can pull him out of any danger.
Yep. Yep.
It's been 60 years since this bunker was sealed, and although they've shored up the opening, they have no idea how stable the interior is. Tension is high.
Das ist ja schon sicher, jetzt kann nichts mehr passieren.
Ihr gebt nach. Die Tüte sind weg.
Das ist durch. Das ist durch. Cool, cool, cool.
He's through. He's in it.
The support team waits anxiously for news from inside the bunker.
He's through. And safe.
He's made it. But the video he passes back brings bad news. Rubble blocks the way. They're tantalizingly close to their goal, but they need to find another way in. Throughout March 1945, bombs fall on Berlin 7 days a week. Then, in April, the Russian army reaches the outskirts of the capital city. April 21st, 1945. One last air raid, and then the city goes quiet. A silence more terrifying than the sound of war.
Well, there was what they called a battle pause. I don't know what it meant, but they said it was a quiet before the storm, said the soldiers. And so we all waited.
The Soviets begin the largest artillery assault ever seen.
There was no warning, nothing, you know, and you could see those rockets fly over your head, you know, like a black shadow. just can't describe it. Wee, 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 wee. It went like that. And, you know, your brain was just cooking, I thought. Like my brain was cooking from that noise. It was the most terrible noise I've ever heard.
In just 2 weeks, they fire almost 2 million shells. But then, in North Berlin, the Red Army meets an immovable object. They target their biggest guns on Humboldtine Flak Tower.
Es gab kleine Zementwolken und ab und zu fiel dann so eine Luke runter.
There were small cement clouds, and around the windows the walls came down.
Irgendwo
We laughed a little that the architects never thought that one day this bunker would be shot at from the ground.
Bunker wird, der von der Erde aus beschossen wird.
Today, the impact of the Russian shells is clearly visible, but the huge walls stand firm, and the Russian infantry is forced to go around the tower. The remaining German army fights the Russians street by street.
Kann da sowas einstürzen?
Yards from the tower, after digging for 2 days, the team finally secures safe access to the bunker.
For me, it's a good feeling to come inside of some rooms. They was closed for more than 50 years.
Kommt hier lang.
Ja, warte. Brauchen noch mal die Fläche, oder?
Nee, ich kann noch keine sehen.
The bunker is full of giant boulders, but the excitement of a new discovery is still there.
The first impression is amazing. Big blocks of concrete, the biggest I ever saw.
As the Berlin underworld team explores the park shelter for the first time in 60 years, they start to make sense of its layout and dimensions.
Interessant ist immer die Kammer 1, da saß der Bunkerwarte, die hat ein Telefon.
Also das heißt, es waren 36 Kammerbunker. And inside of each room there was 2 beds with 3 levels for 2 to 3 families.
Some rooms are recognizable, but the Berlin underworld discovers a new enemy that's slowly destroying the bunker.
These are roots from the trees above in the Humboldtine Park, and they really destroyed this bunker. Not even the war or the bombs destroyed it, but this was successful. A tree destroyed this bunker ceiling. It's amazing.
This is Tempelhof, Nazi Germany's premier airport.
It was a very important building, and it was one of the first huge buildings that were planned by the Nazis. And Adolf Hitler made it his personal project, and he wanted it to become the largest and the most beautiful airport of the world.
Tempelhof Airport's full of swagger. Everything is oversized. Covering just over 3 million square feet, this colossal showpiece is designed to dazzle both foreign visitors to Nazi Berlin and the German public.
Hitler wanted this airport not only to be an airport, but to be an air stadium too. So the huge crescent shape of the airport has its reason in this idea to build an air stadium.
Hitler plans to stage an annual military air show, and the terracing on the airport roof provides standing room for 100,000 spectators. The Nazi propagandists never miss a photo opportunity. From the air, it looks like the Nazi eagle. But the air shows never take place. Once the war starts, Germany needs to manufacture arms here instead. The Nazis built a huge underground industrial complex, turning out bomber and fighter planes between 1940 and 1945. Deep under Tempelhof lies a maze of tunnels that still house the airport's water and electricity plant. Years later, the Berlin underworld is still uncovering new secrets.
These tunnels are for heating pipes, for example, for the electricity system for the old Tempelhof airport from the 30s. We never counted them all, but it's said that altogether we have a sum of 6 levels and 40 kilometers length, all the tunnels together.
This wartime aircraft factory is entirely self-sufficient, with its own power and water. The labyrinth of tunnels even includes bunkers to protect airport workers from air raids. One bunker in particular stands out for its remarkable wartime murals.
This shelter, you can read at the door, was for the employees of the German Lufthansa company. It was the biggest one, even in the 30s. I never saw a bunker with paintings in this good shape before. And they show some little stories, funny stories about the life in Berlin. It is to let the people sitting in this bunker think of other things than the war and the bombs outside.
Deep underground, encased in concrete, the Nazis secretly build and repair Focke-Wulf fighters in this railway tunnel right up to the last days of the war. Parts of production line machinery still hang from the ceiling. Suspended from a motor-driven rack, Focke-Wulf fighter planes are moved down the assembly line. Once ready, the planes are pushed out of the tunnel and depart for the front lines.
Rückkehr der deutschen Staffeln.
The dimensions of the tunnel are exact.
We measured in this tunnel a width of 10.8 meters. The wingspan of the Focke-Wulf 190 fighter of the Germans was only 10.5 meters, so you have 30 centimeters, and you can imagine that the planes and the wings were only some centimeters swinging left and right in this tunnel.
Tempelhof is crucial to the defense of Berlin, manufacturing and repairing some of the last aircraft of the Third Reich. But this factory holds a gruesome secret, discovered only by chance. Something they never predicted.
Wir haben diese Karteikarten etwa 4 Kilometer südlich vom Flughafen.
We found these metal cases about 4 kilometers south of Tempelhof Airport in a weapons factory bunker that made parts for the aircraft industry.
Sehr wichtig war.
These are factory time cards with the names and nationalities of workers.
Es beinhaltet 12.000.
There are 12,600 cards.
Von denen
4,000 are slave laborers.
As the Nazis plunder occupied countries, they take everything of value, including people, forcing thousands of East European slave laborers to work at Tempelhof. In April 1945, Tempelhof is still making aircraft 24 hours a day below ground, while above ground, the battle rages on. The secret factory is hidden from enemy view. The Soviets just want the airfield for their own planes. After 2 days of bitter fighting, the Soviets finally seize Tempelhof. Berlin, April 1945. Hitler and the Nazi regime are now completely surrounded. With the Red Army just a few miles away, the deluded dictator loses himself in his fantasy of Germania, his massive reconstruction plan for the future Berlin. Outside, the terrified population takes refuge anywhere they can, in tunnels, attics, and bunkers. Conditions worsen as thousands cram into the bunkers.
The air was wet. You know, you could hardly breathe. And the people got off their clothes and they sat there with bare arms and bare shoulders. And you were still sweating and it smelled terrible. You know, there were no deos like you have today or powders or any spray, you know. It smelled awfully.
They were crammed in terrible numbers. I mean, there were anything up to 50,000 in the zoo bunker, in the Anhalter Bahnhof. Nobody could move. People couldn't even go to the lavatory. I mean, they just had to go where they stood.
After years of anti-Bolshevik propaganda, many Berliners prefer even these conditions underground to facing the Red Army.
Bolshevik? I didn't know what is a Bolshevik, you know, and I sat there. And I just remember, I thought, they must be coming up the stairs any time now. What will they look like? And that's what frightened me to death.
People were without hope. They were anxious, and they were fearing the Russians. People committed suicide. It's estimated that in April and May 1945, in Berlin and in the suburbs, some 100,000 people committed suicide.
Whole families take their lives rather than submit to Russian occupation. Berlin is so dangerous, the Nazis now read the news from a bunker under the Reich radio building. Having won a national competition to become a news announcer, 18-year-old Richard Bayer finds himself to be the last public voice of the Third Reich.
Wir haben aber immer drüben aus dem Funkbunker gesendet.
We always transmitted from the radio bunker. It had a 6-meter thick ceiling. Nothing could get through. But the question we asked ourselves from mid-April was, who is still listening to us?
Wer hört uns noch?
The end is near. The Russians tighten their grip on central Berlin. Locals now call their city the Reich Funeral Pyre. But Hitler and his loyal henchmen will never surrender. Goebbels continues to transmit his Nazi propaganda to the end.
Hat noch in den letzten Apriltagen einen Beitrag.
In the last days of April, he spoke about the final struggle in Berlin and told us the Führer is still with us. We are still winning the war. We are still transmitting.
But the defense of Berlin is futile. 80,000 young boys, old men, and exhausted soldiers fight more than 1 million Russians. By the end of April, Soviet troops attack the government quarter. This spells certain death for Hitler and his staff. But the Berlin underworld discovers that many Nazis were able to flee beneath the march of the Soviet army. This derelict bunker in the traffic ministry garden is the last escape route for desperate Nazis. For them, it's all over. Hitler leaves his bunker on April 20th to award medals to Hitler Youth for defending Berlin. To hide his ill health, he holds his trembling left hand behind his back. 10 days later, with the Russians just streets away, Hitler finally accepts that the war is lost and kills himself. His inner circle follows suit, ending their lives with poison capsules or handguns. But for others, this is their cue to flee.
Most of the groups try to escape to this direction. It's the best way to escape from the Chancellery and the government district to the north.
Well, to avoid the fighting on the Wilhelmstrasse.
Yes, yes.
They hope they can safely cross the main street underground and then follow the subway tunnels north as far as the river, escaping the raging battle above.
So here's the entrance to the connection to the subway system. You see the black ground on it. You see the words written in black on the yellow. Fluchtweg, Feuersturm. Escape way when firestorm comes. In black letters on the yellow. And the arrows point on this to go through to the subway tunnel. And they walked some kilometers to the north. In this direction is the north. And try to escape through the train station at Friedrichstraße and over the Weidenhammer Bridge.
Very few escape the Red Army alive. Russian guns mow down wave after wave on the Wiedendamer Bridge. It's all over for Nazi Germany. Richard Bayer remembers the words read to the nation on Hitler's death.
Beim Endkampf in Berlin ist an der Spitze seiner Truppen unser Führer für Deutschland gefallen.
In the final struggle for Berlin, Hitler fell with his troops for Germany. He fought for his ideas until the end. And after this transmission, Hitler's favorite music was played: Wagner and Bruckner.
Two hours later, Bayer shuts down the station with the following words.
We remember the heroic actions of the German soldiers on land, sea and air. The Führer is dead. Long live the Reich.
The battle for Berlin has ended. Amid the ruins, the flak tower at Humboldt-Hain fights on for one more day. Then the guns fall silent. As the civilians emerge from their bunkers, blinking into the sunlight, the Berlin that greets them is unrecognizable.
You could hardly work out where the streets had been. I went with my sister to Alexanderplatz to look for an uncle's house. But you couldn't tell where the streets were.
Hitler's grand buildings and monuments lie in ruins. After 4 years of bitter warfare, the Russian army celebrates a bloody victory. Berlin's slave workers begin their long journeys home, while the Allies forced the city's residents to clear the rubble brick by brick. At street level, all traces of Nazism are removed. Underground, it's a different story.
Beneath the rubble of the ruined Reichstag in Berlin, workmen discover underground passages leading to air raid shelters, once used by members of Hitler's government. Here fled the Nazi stooges, whose dreams of world conquest ended up in a nightmare of fire and fury raining down from the skies.
There are still dozens of undiscovered Nazi bunkers under Berlin. Enough to keep the Berlin underworld busy for years to come. Inside, the final secrets of the dying Nazi regime remain, waiting only